The letter came for her on the morning the ice went out of the harbour. Dora Vess, printer's widow, setter of type these 4 years, since her husband's lungs gave out, was pulling a proof sheet off the platen when the boy knocked at the door of the shop. She knew the sound of that knock. She had heard it at funerals and at court summons, and at the door of the lending room when a man owed money he did not have. She wiped her hands on the compositing rag and went to the door before the boy had stopped knocking. He was perhaps 12, in a coat too large for him, and boots that had seen another owner. He held out the envelope with both hands, the way children did when they had been told the thing was important. "Mrs. Vess," he said. "From Dunmore." She had not heard of Dunmore. She took the letter. The seal was a hawk on a blank field, pressed in black wax. Inside, 4 lines in a clerk's hand. "The Viscount Dunmore is gravely ill. His household has no physician within reach. You were recommended by Mrs. Opal Hartigan of Brackmore as a woman of particular competence in matters of the press and of the body both. Please come at once. The carriage waits at the King's Arms." Dora read it twice. She looked out past the boy into the street. Brackmore was 40 miles north. She had delivered one child there 4 years ago, on a February night so cold the ink in the shop had frozen solid. Mrs. Hartigan had been the midwife who came after, when Dora had already done what needed doing. The carriage was not at the King's Arms. It was in the lane outside the shop. She could see the lamps of it from where she stood. What she did not know yet, reading the letter in the grey morning light with the proof sheet still warm on the press behind her, was that she would not open the shop door again for 22 days, and that someone inside Dunmore Hall had been very carefully deciding what went into the Viscount's tea. She told the boy to wait. She went back inside. She banked the fire, pulled the ink cloth over the type cases, and locked the press with the key she kept on a cord at her wrist. She had not taken that key off since William died. She took her case. The coachman's name was Prentice. He told her this without being asked, which she found either honest or nervous, and she had not yet decided which. He drove fast. The road north of town ran along the lake's edge, and the ice had only broken that morning, and the black water showed in plates between the grey sheets still clinging to the shallows. "How long has he been ill?" she said. "8 days, ma'am. Maybe 9. What manner of ill?" Prentice kept his eyes on the road. "The shaking kind," he said. "And the forgetting kind." She let that stand. She watched the lake. "Who sent for me?" "Miss Tillett." "The housekeeper." "Not the physician." Prentice said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "The physician hasn't come since the 3rd day." Dora set her case on her knees. She thought about a physician who had stopped coming on the 3rd day of a shaking illness in a man who presumably could pay him. She thought about a housekeeper who had written 4 lines to a printer's widow 40 miles away. She thought about Mrs. Hartigan, who was the most cautious woman in Brackmore, and did not recommend people lightly. She looked at the dark road ahead, and she did not say any of what she thought. Dunmore Hall sat on the brow of a hill above a frozen pond. The gate lodge was lit. The main house was mostly dark, except for 2 windows high up on the east wing, where a lamp moved behind the glass. In the way, lamps moved when someone was carrying them from room to room, at an hour when no one should be moving. A woman met her at the door before the carriage had fully stopped. She was perhaps 50, with a bunch of keys at her waist, and the look of a person who had not slept in 4 nights but was not going to say so. "Mrs. Vess," she said. "I'm Tillett. Thank you for coming." "Tell me what you know," Dora said. They walked as Tillett talked. Up the main stair, along a corridor that smelled of camphor, and something underneath the camphor that Dora did not yet name. Tillett talked quickly and without ornament, the way people talked when they had been holding the words back, and the vessel had gotten full. 12 days ago the Viscount had come back from Moorbell, which was the estate of his younger brother. He had come back in his own carriage with his own driver. He had seemed well enough at supper. The next morning he had not come down. By evening he was shaking. By the second night he was confused. The physician, a man called Stern from the village, had come once, and then not again. He said it was the brain fever, Tillett said. He said rest and dark and quiet. Did he leave anything? A bottle, blue glass. I still have it, I haven't given it. Dora looked at her. Why not? Tillett stopped walking. She looked at the key ring at her side. She said, because on the 4th morning I went into the still room, and the foxglove jar had been moved. The room was cold. Someone had let the fire get low, and the man on the bed was the reason the fire was low. He had thrown off the covers in the night and knocked the poker off the stand, and burned his hand on the grate in some past hour before the shaking had taken him down again. The burn was bandaged. The bandaging was not good. Dora set her case on the writing table and went to him. He was on his back, which was wrong. She turned him to his side, wedging a bolster behind him, with the efficiency of someone who had done it before, which she had, more times than she would have liked. She checked his pulse at his throat. It was there. It was not right. It was there. The Viscount Dunmore, whose name she had heard 3 times in the carriage, but had not yet connected to a face, was a man of perhaps 35, with a jaw that had not been shaved in 2 weeks, and hands that, even slack on the coverlet, were the hands of a man who worked. Not decorative hands. Ink-stained, she noticed. She noticed it the way she noticed weather, without judgment, as information. Ink-stained hands on a Viscount. She filed it. "Get me water," she said to Tillett. "Cold water, a basin and 2 cloths. Get me whatever the physician left in the blue bottle, and get me the foxglove jar from the stillroom." Tillett went. Dora crouched and put her ear to the man's chest. The sound she heard was the sound of a heart that had been asked to carry too much for too long. She said aloud to the room, because she had learned years ago, that the voice sometimes did more than the hands. "My name is Dora Vess. I am a printer's widow from Portbarrow, and I am going to stay on your side of this." He did not answer. She had not expected him to. She said it anyway. The blue bottle held nothing she recognised. She set it in the lamplight and read the label twice, and then set it aside and did not open it. The foxglove jar had been moved, as Tillett had said. More than moved. The lid had been replaced slightly off its thread, the way a lid was replaced by someone in a hurry, by someone who had lifted it and taken from it and put it back in the dark. The level inside was low. She did not say this to Tillett. She put the jar in her case and latched the case. Through the night she worked. She kept him on his side. She changed the cloth at his neck every half hour. She talked when it seemed useful and was quiet when it did not. At 3 in the morning his eyes opened. He looked past her at the ceiling with the expression of a man at the bottom of a long fall. "Alice," he said. "I don't know Alice," Dora said. "I'm Dora Vess. Drink." She had water at his lips. He swallowed. He coughed. He swallowed again. "The press," he said. She stopped. She looked at him. "What press?" His eyes came down from the ceiling and found her face. The seeing took a moment to start. When it started all at once. "Your hands," he said. "Yes." She showed them. The right forefinger stained at the tip with 4 years of ink. "I set type." "I know," he said, which made no sense. He closed his eyes. "Mrs. Vess," he said. "I asked for you." "I know," she said. "Sleep." She held her hand flat against his forehead. She had done this with William at the end, and with the Hartigan child, and with old Mr. Carrow in the rooms above the shop, who had died one February of nothing anyone could name. She did not know why it helped. She knew that it did. 3 days passed before the Viscount could sit up without help. In that time Dora learned the shape of the house. She learned which stairs creaked, and which door stuck, and which of the 4 remaining servants could be trusted with what. There was Tillett, who could be trusted with everything. There was the cook, Mrs. Farr, who was reliable and kept her head down and was frightened of something she had not yet named. There was a stableman called Og, who slept in the loft and asked no questions. There was a girl called Pem, 16 years old, who was trying very hard to be invisible and was almost succeeding. There was no one else. The household had been larger. Dora could see the shape of what it had been in the empty rooms. The chairs arranged for more people than were left to sit in them, the table in the dining room laid with leaves put in and not taken out. "The staff went in October," Tillett said when Dora asked. "Most of them. He let them go. He let them go, or someone told him to let them go." Tillett put the bread on the table and did not answer. On the 2nd day the Viscount kept down broth. On the 3rd morning he asked for his spectacles. Dora found them on the table by the window, folded, with a small smear on the left lens. She gave them to him. He put them on. He looked at her. "You stayed," he said. "You asked me to. I asked before you came, when I could still ask things." He settled the spectacles on his nose. He had the face, she thought, of a man who had spent a long time looking at small print. "My name is Whitmore Fane. You have not used it. You have not been in a condition to use names. I'm in a condition now." He looked at the window. The pond below the house was still frozen, but the edges had gone grey. "What is wrong with me, Mrs. Vess? I have a suspicion. Tell me." "No, not until I'm certain." "You are already certain." She picked up the basin and moved it to the washstand. "I will be more certain by Friday. Friday is 4 days. Yes." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The foxglove jar." Dora turned. He was watching her. His eyes behind the spectacles were the grey of the lake in November, and they were entirely clear. "Tillet told you about the jar," he said. "It was not a question. Tillet showed it to me." And she set the basin down. She came back to the chair by the bed. She sat, because her back was aching in the way backs, ached after 3 nights in a chair designed for someone shorter, and because he had asked her to sit in the same flat voice that William had once used, the voice that expected to be answered. "The level was low," she said. "The lid had been replaced incorrectly. There was residue on the inside of the jar, consistent with recent handling." Whitmore Fane looked at her for a long time. "And the physician stopped coming on the 3rd day," he said. "Yes, and I have been drinking from a cup that Tillet has not cleaned since." He stopped. "Since your brother's man was last in the house," Dora said, "the room was very quiet. The ice on the pond shifted, somewhere below the window with a sound like a page turning. My brother's name is Lorne Fane," he said. "He is 31 years old. He is a captain in the artillery. He was at Moorbell when I came to visit. He was very glad to see me. He pressed me to stay longer than I had planned." He looked at the ceiling. "I stayed 6 days. Is he your heir until I marry, or until he decides not to wait?" Dora rose. She went to the window and looked at the pond. "Your Grace," she said, which was not his title, but she had not yet learned to use the correct one, and he had not corrected her. "I think you have been given foxglove in small doses over a period of days. I think it began at Moorbell, and was continued here, in your cup, by someone who had access to your stillroom." She heard the sound of him adjusting himself in the bed. She did not turn. "You will not tell me who," he said. "I will tell you what I can prove, and what can you prove? More than I could yesterday." She turned. "From tonight, you drink only what I pour. You eat only what Mrs. Farr prepares in my presence. You do not take anything from your brother's man if he is still in the house." "Kesson left on the day I fell ill," Whitmore said, very promptly. "Yes," she went to the door. "I thought he might have." On the 4th day they ate together for the first time. He sat in the chair by the window with a lap rug across his knees and his spectacles on. She sat across the small table with tea and bread between them. He ate more than she did. She noted this as a good sign and ate what she could. "You said you set type," he said. 4 years, since my husband died. Before that I was a printer's wife, which is the same work with less pay and a different name on the door." He looked at her over his spectacles. "Your husband's name was on the door. William Vess. He was a good printer and a better man." She broke her bread. "He died of a lung complaint. It took 3 years to do it, and it was not quick. I'm sorry. He is 3 years gone. The sorry has settled." She picked up her tea. "The press is mine now. I run it alone. I have 1 boy who helps me on press days, and 1 woman who comes in for the binding. We do a newspaper on Tuesdays and broadsides when the council needs them." "Is that legal?" he said. "A woman running a press. It is in 3 provinces. In mine, no one has told me otherwise to my face." She set down her cup. "Your Grace, Whitmore," she looked at him. "You have been in this room for 4 days," he said. "You have turned me sideways and held my wrist in the dark and told me to breathe. You may call me Whitmore." She looked at him for a long moment. "Whitmore," she said, "your brother has been written to." "He was still till it wrote to him on the 1st day you fell." She said it was the right and proper thing, she said. Tillet had stopped there. Dora had learned not to push Tillet past where she had stopped. She said it was necessary. "Lorne will come," he said. "Yes. When did Tillet write?" 9 days ago, perhaps. Then he will be here within the week." Whitmore took off his spectacles and held them in his hands. He looked at them. "When he comes," he said, "he will not come alone. He will come with a man of law, and perhaps a physician he has kept in his pocket for the purpose." "What purpose?" "There is provision," Whitmore said, "for a man who has been ill for 12 days without a physician's attendance." There is provision for an estate in disorder. There is provision for a household of 4 servants and no explanation. He put the spectacles back on. He will arrive to help me. Dora understood that. She had set enough type for enough solicitors to understand that. Is there anyone, she said, who would stand witness for you? Who knows your mind as it was before you were ill? He thought. Carver, he said, my solicitor in town, and the bookseller on Loom Street. And he stopped. There is no one who has been here, Mrs. Vess. There is only Tillet, and Tillet is a housekeeper's word. And mine, Dora said. He looked at her. She had not meant to say it. She said it again anyway. And mine. He did not speak for a moment. Then he said, Mrs. Vess, you understand that if my brother arrives with what I believe he intends to arrive with, and you are here as a hired woman with no connection to this house, your word will carry the weight of hired women's words in a room full of men of law. I know the weight, she said. I have watched it weighed for 4 years. Then you understand. She looked at the pond below the window. The grey ice had cracked along the edge, and the black water showed beneath it, cold and certain. I understand, she said, that if we are to have any ground to stand on, when your brother walks through that door, I need 3 days and access to your stillroom and your accounts and the name of your brother's man of business in town. He gave her all 3 without asking why. She had expected him to ask. She found she was glad he had not. She worked. In the 3 days before Lorne Fane's arrival, Dora Vess moved through Dunmore Hall the way she moved through a press run, methodically, without waste, with the particular attention to the placement of small things that came from 4 years of knowing that one wrong letter in a word could change everything it meant. She found the foxglove, not the stillroom jar, which she had already taken. She found a paper packet of it at the back of the desk in the estate office, behind the ledger for the East Field. She did not touch it with her hands. She lifted it with a cloth and put it in her case. She found the account book for household purchases. The entry for the 16th of October read, Tincture of digitalis, 2 drams, for the use of the household, per Kesson. Kesson was not the household steward. Kesson had no authority to purchase anything against the estate's account. Kesson was Lorne Fane's man. She photographed the entry in the way she had learned to photograph things that mattered. She sat with it for 10 minutes and read it until she could have set it in type from memory. She found, on the morning of the 3rd day, a letter in the drawer of the hall table, in a hand she did not know, addressed to Lord Lorne Fane at Moorbell, dated the 15th of October. He has not changed the will, I am certain of it. Hartwell said there was a woman in town he had spoken to twice at the bookseller's, but Whitmore has said nothing to me, and nothing has been drawn up. You have time yet. It was signed with initials. Dora held the letter by its edge. She had been a printer long enough to know that letters left in drawers were not left by accident. She had been a woman long enough to know that a letter this useful, found this easily, could be either a gift or a trap. She put it in her case with the foxglove packet and locked the clasp. That afternoon she said to Whitmore, who was sitting up in bed reading a pamphlet he had asked Tillet to bring him from the library, Your brother is going to come with a petition of unsound mind. He looked up. He had the pamphlet open on his knee and his spectacles on, and a cup of tea she had poured cooling at his elbow. He looked, for the first time since she had come, like a man who lived in a house, rather than a man who was dying in one. I know, he said. He may also have a physician. Stern, Whitmore said. If Stern has agreed to testify, we have less ground than I thought. We have more ground than you think. She sat down in the chair. But I need to know something. He waited. The woman, at the bookseller's on Loom Street. What is her name? He was still for a moment. Then he said, How did you know about that? I found a letter. She told him where. She did not show it to him, because she wanted to see his face when she described it without the letter in front of either of them. His face told her the letter was genuine. Her name is not relevant, he said. It is, if she can speak to your character and your mind before this illness. She is a woman in trade. Her word will carry no more than yours. Then 2 women in trade, Dora said, are better than one. He looked at her for a long moment. She keeps the bookshop at the end of Loom Street. Tell her. He stopped. Tell her Whit sent you. She'll know. Dora sent Pem that afternoon with a note. Pem went without asking questions and came back in 2 hours with a reply. I will be there by Friday. I know what he needs. I'll bring the account book. CP Dora read the note. She burned it. She told no one about it except Tillet, because Tillet was the only person in the house who needed to know. That night, Lorne Fane arrived. He came after dark, which she had not expected. She had expected him in the morning, the way people arrived when they wanted to be seen arriving. He came at 9:30 with a hired carriage, and one trunk and two men she did not recognize, one in a dark coat that might have been a physician's, and one in a clerk's coat with a satchel. Dora was at the upper window with the lamp turned low. She had been walking the length of the corridor because Pem had a toothache, and Dora had taken the night watch herself. She saw the carriage come up the drive. She saw the man who stepped out. He had his brother's height, and not his brother's hands. His hands were clean and careful, and he used them to smooth his coat before he looked at the house. He surveyed it the way someone surveyed a thing they were about to take stock of. Dora went to Whitmore. He was asleep. She put her hand on his shoulder. He woke without startling, the way people woke when they had learned that being startled cost too much. "He's here," she said. "How does he look?" "Well prepared." Whitmore reached for his spectacles on the nightstand. He put them on. He straightened himself against the bolster. He said, "Light the other lamp. Set the chair so he has to stand." And he looked at her. "What is the phrase from the press?" She did not understand at first. Then she did. "Set the room," she said. "Set the room, yes, as you would set a page." She lit the second lamp. She put it behind him so the light fell on his face and would fall on his brother's face when his brother came in. She moved the chair to the foot of the bed, which was the place of the suppliant, and she put the small table with his water cup where anyone entering would see it first. She set the room. Lorne Fane knocked and came in without waiting for an answer, which told her a great deal. He stopped 3 paces into the room. He took in his brother propped against the bolster, the good light, the woman sitting straight-backed in the corner, and he adjusted his face. "Whitmore," he said. "Thank God, Lorne." Whitmore did not move. He was conserving himself. Dora could see it. Every movement calculated, every word chosen. "You took the Morbell Road." "I came as fast as I could. Tillet's letter frightened me." He looked at Dora. His eyes were grey like his brother's, and unlike his brother's, they did not settle. "And this is Mrs. Vess," Whitmore said. "She runs the press at Portbarrow. She has been here 4 days." "The press?" Lorne smiled. It was a good smile. "Mrs. Vess, thank you for your trouble. My brother is in good hands now. You may rest." Dora remained where she was. "She remains," Whitmore said. "She is attending to my correspondence." Lorne looked at his brother. Something moved in his face and was gone. He sat at the foot of the bed, in the chair that had been placed for him to sit in, and he did not seem to notice that it had been placed. "Brother," he said, "I won't dissemble. You look ill. You look worse than Tillet's letter suggested. I have brought Dr. Henwick, who is very capable, and I think Dr. Stern has already seen me," Whitmore said. He recommended rest and quiet. "I am resting. I am quiet. Stern hasn't been here in 10 days. No, Dr. Stern and I have come to a mutual understanding." Whitmore kept his eyes on his brother's face. Dora kept her eyes on his brother's hands. "What have you brought Henwick to say, Lorne?" Lorne's hands were very still. "I've brought him to help you, and the clerk, a precaution for the estate. The estate is in no difficulty. Brother." Lorne leaned forward. He had a warm way of leaning forward. He had practiced it, Dora thought, a long time. "You have been on your back for 12 days. Your household is at 4 servants. There is a woman from Portbarrow running your correspondence. These are not the signs of an estate in order. There are provisions." "I know the provisions," Whitmore said. "Tell me which one you plan to use." The room was very quiet. The lamp behind Whitmore's head held its position. Lorne said, "An unsound mind cannot conduct its own affairs. This is not a punishment, it is a protection. And who would conduct them in my place? A trustee, someone close, someone with the family's interests at heart." Whitmore said nothing. He looked at his brother. Dora had watched his face for 4 days. She knew the difference now between the face he used when he was thinking and the face he used when he had already thought. "Lorne," he said, "the stillroom jar is empty." Lorne did not move. "The account book for October shows a purchase of tincture of digitalis against the estate's name, signed for by your man Kesson on the 16th. 3 days before I came to Morbell. 5 days before I fell ill. Lorne said, "I don't know what, Kesson. Your handwriting is in the household letter drawer," Dora said. Both men looked at her. She had not meant to speak. She had told herself, as she had told herself at every press run when something went wrong at the last moment, that she would wait, that she would let the thing play out to its natural stop before she moved. She stood anyway. She set her hands on the small table by the window. She looked at Lorne Fane across the room. "I have been setting type for 10 years, she said. 8 for my husband and 4 for myself. I know a man's hand when I have read it twice." She looked at him steadily. "The letter in the hall table drawer is in your hand, Lord Fane. The purchase of Digitalis was against your account. The physician you brought with you has not set foot in this house, and you have not asked once why." Lorne's face was very still. "The house has a physician," Dora said. "What it did not have is a witness. That is why I am here." The room held. Behind her she could hear Whitmore's breathing, steady and deliberate. She had listened to it for 4 nights. She could have counted the intervals in her sleep. Lorne Fane looked at his brother. He looked at the woman from Portbarrow, standing at the table with her right hand showing the ink stain at the forefinger. He looked at the door. The door was closed. He had closed it himself when he came in. "Whitmore," he said. "This woman—" "Is correct," Whitmore said, "in every particular." Lorne stood. He was a tall man, and he stood tallly, the way men stood when they were deciding whether the ground could still be recovered. He looked at Dora once more. She did not move. He sat back down. It was not a surrender. It was a calculation. She recognized it because she had seen William make the same calculation once in a room with a creditor, when the numbers had come out plain enough that further argument cost more than concession. "What do you want?" Lorne said. It was addressed to his brother. "I want your clerk to go," Whitmore said. "And Henwick, I want Kesson's account written out in full and signed. I want the balance of whatever was purchased against my household name in October returned to this estate." He looked at his brother for a long moment. "And I want you to leave Dunmore tonight, Lorne." "Not tomorrow. Tonight. And if I don't—" "There is a solicitor in town who has been keeping my affairs for 11 years. His name is Carver. He will be here in the morning. There is a bookseller on Loom Street who can speak to my mind in September. She will be here before noon." Whitmore adjusted his spectacles. "And there is Mrs. Vess, who sets type for the council's broadsheets every second Tuesday, who knows every clerk and magistrate in the district by name, and who has a very good press." Lorne looked at Dora. For a moment his face was simply a man's face, without the warmth, and without the calculation underneath the warmth. And what was left was something tired and younger than she had expected. He said, "You would have liked my mother, Mrs. Vess." He left that night. The clerk and the physician left with him. Prentice drove them to the crossroads and came back. Dora shut the door. She turned to Tillett, who had been standing in the shadows of the entrance hall through all of it, with her keys and her face, and 4 nights' worth of sleeplessness she had not put down. "He'll come back," Dora said, "with something better." "Not before Friday," Tillett said. "The roads to Morbell are ice past the junction. Then we have until Friday." "Yes." Tillett looked at her. "Mrs. Vess, he'll bring the magistrate when he comes back." "Yes, he will." "Your word alone." "I know." She started up the stairs. "That's why I'm not planning to stand on my word alone." She did not sleep that night. She sat at the writing table in the dressing room that Tillett had given her, and she worked by candlelight with the estate account book open on one side and her notebook open on the other. She wrote out every date, every purchase, every entry that bore Kesson's name. She wrote it in the clean, even hand she used for the council's legal notices, the hand William had taught her when they were first married, and she had asked him to show her everything. She thought about William as she wrote. She had thought about him in pieces for 3 years. In the smell of the ink when she opened the shop in the morning, in the way the press sounded on a cold day, lower than in summer, in the empty side of the ledger where his column had been. She had not thought about him in a full and unbroken way since the week after the funeral. She thought about him now. She thought about the morning he had told her, matter-of-factly, that the cough was getting worse, and he knew what that meant. She thought about the way he had shown her the press accounts and said, "You will know all of it before I go, Dora, because you are going to need to." She thought about his hands, which had been nothing like Whitmore Fane's hands, but had the same particular quality. Hands that were for use, she thought. I have been writing his name on the ledger for 3 years. The column is still in his hand because I have not had the heart to change it to mine. She thought, I will change it when I go home. She turned back to the account book. She wrote until the candle guttered. She lit another. She wrote until the sky outside the window went from black to the grey that was not yet dawn. Then she put the pen down and looked at what she had written and thought, this is enough. If Carver is the man Whitmore says he is, and if Cecilia Prout comes, as she promised, this is enough. It would have to be. At 4 a.m, Tillett knocked at the dressing-room door. There's someone at the back gate, she said. A man on foot. He says he's come from Moorbell. Dora was on her feet before Tillett finished the sentence. She was at the window. She could see the back gate from this angle. There was a lamp at it, moving. Does Lorne's man of business live on the Moorbell Road? Tillett thought. Harwick, yes. 3 miles out. Lorne is not iced in, Dora said. He told us he was iced in and he is not. She was already at her boots. Who is at the gate? I don't know him. Don't open it. She put her shawl on. She put her cloak over the shawl. Where is Whitmore's copy of the estate deed? Library. Second shelf. The red binding. Get it. Bring it to me in the library. Don't let anyone in the house. She went down the back stair. She went through the kitchen, where Mrs. Farr was at the fire with a look that said she had been at the fire all night and had heard everything and was not going to speak first. Dora went past her. She went into the library. She found the red binding. She opened it on the table. She read. She was a fast reader. 10 years of setting other men's words in type made you a fast reader of anything, because you were always looking for what was wrong. She found what she needed in the 4th clause. She went back upstairs. She went to Whitmore. He was awake. He had been awake, she thought, since Lorne left. He was sitting up with the lamp burning and the pamphlet closed on his knee, in the way people sat when they were not reading and were not trying to sleep and were simply waiting for what would come next. He's not iced in, Dora said. No. Whitmore did not seem surprised. Harwick, I think so. He looked at her. What's in the deed? The 4th clause. Appointment of trustee requires the signature of 2 family members in good standing or 1 family member and 1. She stopped. 1 what? He said. 1 spouse of the estate holder. The room was very quiet. Whitmore took off his spectacles. He held them in both hands. He looked at them for a long moment with the expression of a man reading something in a language he is translating in his head. He looked up. Mrs. Vess, Whitmore, he said. I won't ask you to stay after. I know, and I won't. He stopped again. He started again more carefully. Dora, I have been a printer's widow's patient for 9 days. I know the sound of your step on the floor and the way you talk in the dark to a man who can't answer. And I know that you have not slept more than 3 hours together since you came. He set the spectacles down on the coverlet. I know you have not gone back to the shop, and I know you have ink on your right hand still, and I know you have William Vess's key on a cord at your wrist. He looked at her. I know that you are the most capable person who has stood in this room in the 11 years I have lived in it. She did not answer. I am not asking for a marriage, he said. I am asking for a paper, for Friday, for the estate and for Carver's meeting, and for whatever Lorne sends down the Moorbell Road tonight. He paused. I release you after, entirely, and in writing if you wish it. Dora looked at the window. The sky was the dark blue that came just before the grey. The ice on the pond below would be shifting. She could hear it sometimes from this room, when the house was quiet enough. She thought about the press. She thought about the shop on Tuesday mornings, with the paper loaded and the ink mixed and everything in its place, the way she had placed it. She thought about the key at her wrist, which she had not taken off in 4 years. She said, I will marry you on Friday morning. He nodded. He did not say thank you. She was glad of that. There is a condition, she said. Name it. The column in the estate ledger. There is a column still in your steward's name. From before he left, saw it yesterday, I want it changed to Tillett's name before the end of the month. He looked at her. Tillett has been keeping this house together for 4 nights, Dora said. Her name should be on the thing she is doing, he said. Done. She went back to the dressing room. She sat on the edge of the cot. She did not sleep. She looked at the cord at her wrist, at the key hanging from it, small and iron and entirely hers. She held it in her palm. She thought, "William, I have walked the whole length of it without you." She thought, "I am going to put the key on its hook on the wall of the shop when I go back. Not away, on its hook, where it belongs and where I can take it down when I need it." She thought, "I am a printer's widow who is going to be a viscountess in 6 hours. And I do not know how to be a viscountess," she thought. "I know how to read a deed in the 4th clause. I know how to set type for a legal notice. I know how to talk to a man in the dark until he decides to breathe. That will have to be enough." At 8 in the morning they were married in the library of Dunmore Hall, because Whitmore could not yet manage the road to the church, and because Dora thought the library was the right room for it. Carver witnessed. Tillett witnessed. Cecilia Prout had arrived at 7:30 with the account book from the bookshop on Loom Street, and she witnessed too. Whitmore stood without leaning. He had asked Dora not to take his arm at the door, and she had not, and he had stood for 4 minutes without leaning, which was more than he had managed the day before. He spoke the words in a clear, dry voice. She spoke them in the voice she used when she was reading proof aloud at the press, the voice that was not loud but that made errors want to show themselves. The solicitor shut his ledger. He said, "You may, Whitmore turned to Dora. He looked at her. He raised his hand and set it flat against her cheek, which she had not expected. It was the same gesture she had used 4 nights ago in the stillroom doorway when she had held her hand to his forehead until his breathing had evened. He knew. She saw that he knew. He bent and kissed her once. It was brief and it was not casual. There was a decision in it. "My wife," he said. Carver wrote it down. Lorne's man arrived at 10. He did not bring Lorne. He brought a letter and a physician, and a signed statement from someone called Harrick. Carver read the letter in the entrance hall with Dora at his elbow, and Tillett at the door and the physician standing in the cold, because no one had invited him in. Carver read. He folded the letter. He handed it back to Lorne's man. He said, "The Viscount Dunmore is a married man as of this morning. His wife is present and in full competency. The 4th clause of the estate deed requires the signature of a spouse to any trustee petition, which signature has not been given and will not be given. The grounds for the petition are therefore void." He looked at Lorne's man without expression. "The account of the October purchases against this estate will be laid before the magistrate at Portbarrow on Monday. I would advise Lord Fane to engage counsel." The man left. The physician left with him. Tillett shut the door. She stood for a moment with her back to it. She looked at Dora. "He'll appeal," she said. "Yes," Dora said. "Let him appeal." Months went by. There was a magistrate's hearing in January. Carver laid the account before it in full, with the ledger from the Portbarrow apothecary, and the letter from the hall table drawer, and Kesson's deposition, which Kesson had given in exchange for a reduced charge, because Kesson was, in the end, a man who had been used rather than a man who had planned. The hearing took 3 days. Lorne Fane did not contest the central charge. He sat through it as a soldier sat through things, upright, with his hands flat on his knees, looking at the middle distance. He was not transported. He was not hanged. He was removed from the officer list and from the family trust and from Morbell, which reverted to the estate. His counsel appealed twice and was turned down twice. By March he was in lodgings in town, and Dora had stopped thinking about him. She thought about the press. She went back to it in February for 3 days because there was a council notice due, and her boy could not manage the press alone. She set the type herself. She ran the proof, she smelled the ink and heard the particular sound the platen made on a cold day, and stood in the middle of the shop for a long moment with her hands at her sides and the proof sheet drying on the line, and thought, "Here, this too is here." She did not close the shop. She hired a woman to run it in her absence, a woman called Nell Sark, who had been a compositor's apprentice, and who set type with a speed that made Dora's own hands remember being younger. She kept the key. She put it on its hook on the wall when she was at Portbarrow and took it down when she needed it. She did not wear it on a cord anymore. She wore it as a key. On a morning in May, a year and 2 months after the night of the ice and the lamp, Dora was in the library at Dunmore Hall when Whitmore came to find her. She was at the table with the estate accounts open and a broadside from Nell's press folded at her elbow, and she did not hear him come in because she was reading. He put his hand on her shoulder, and she looked up. "Tillet says there's a woman at the gate," he said. "From Brackmore. She's asking for a printer." Dora looked at him. "What for? Her husband is ill." He said it carefully. "The physician hasn't come. A midwife from the village recommended someone." He met her eyes. "She recommended you." Dora looked down at the account on the table. She looked at the broadside. She looked at the key, which was on its hook on the library wall, because she had put it there 3 weeks ago when she came up from Portbarrow. She rose. She closed the ledger. She did not ask Whitmore if he minded. He did not ask if she was going. They had learned in 14 months that some questions were answered by the standing up. She took her case from the hall cupboard. She put on her cloak. She took the key from its hook and held it in her hand for a moment, this plain iron key that had been William's and was hers, that had opened the shop in all the weathers she had opened it in, that had been on a cord at her wrist through the worst year and the long years after. She held it. She put it in her pocket. Tillet met her at the door. Tillet had a bundle under her arm, wrapped cloth, and she held it out. "From the kitchen," she said. "For the road," Dora took it. She looked at Tillet's face, which was the face of a woman who had held a house together through the winter, and who had her name now on the ledger column where it belonged, and who was not going to say the tender thing out loud but was holding the bundle out. "Thank you," Dora said. She went out the door. She went down the drive. At the gate a woman was waiting with a boy and a hired cart and the particular look of someone who had come 40 miles, not knowing if she would be turned away. "Mrs. Vess," the woman said. "I'm told you're the one to come to." Dora set her case in the cart. "Tell me what you know," she said. They went. She did not go because she was a printer's widow with nothing else to do, or because the estate no longer needed her, or because Whitmore had asked. She went because the woman at the gate had the face of a woman with a man ill at home, and no one who could help. She went because she had been called, and because she had always answered when she was called, and because answering when you are called is not the same as having no choice. She went because she chose.